Wednesday, November 3rd, 1943. Dear Kitty, in order to give us something to do, which is also educational, Daddy applied for a prospectus from the Teachers' Institute in Leiden. Margot nosed through the thick book at least 3 times without finding anything to her liking or to suit her purse. Daddy was quicker and wants a letter written to the Institute asking for a trial lesson in elementary Latin. To give me something new to begin as well, Daddy asked Cufuus for a children's Bible so that I could find out something about the New Testament at last. Do you want to give Anne a Bible for Chanukah? Asked Margot, somewhat perturbed. Yes, I think St. Nicholas Day is a better occasion, answered Daddy. Jesus just doesn't go with Chanukah. Yours, Anne. Monday evening, November 8th, 1943. Dear Kitty, if you were to read my pile of letters one after another, you would certainly be struck by the many different moods in which they are written. It annoys me that I am so dependent on the atmosphere here, but I'm certainly not the only one. We all find it the same. If I read a book that impresses me, I have to take myself firmly in hand before I mix with other people, otherwise they would think my mind rather queer. At the moment, as you've probably noticed, I'm going through a spell of being depressed. I really couldn't tell you why it is, but I believe it's just because I'm a coward, and that's what I keep bumping up against. This evening, while Ellie was still here, there was a long, loud, penetrating ring at the door. I turned white at once, got a tummy ache and heart palpitations, all from fear. At night, when I'm in bed, I see myself alone in a dungeon, without Mummy and Daddy. Sometimes I wander by the roadside, or our secret annex is on fire, or they come and take us away at night. I see everything as if it is actually taking place, and this gives me the feeling that it may all happen to me very soon. Meep often says she envies us for possessing such tranquility here. That may be true, but she is not thinking about all our fears. I simply can't imagine that the world will ever be normal for us again. I do talk about after the war, but then it is only a castle in the air, something that will never really happen. If I think back to our old house, my girlfriends, the fun at school, it is just as if another person lived it all, not me. I see the 8 of us with our secret annex as if we were a little piece of blue heaven, surrounded by heavy black rain clouds. The round, clearly defined spot where we stand is still safe, but the clouds gather more closely about us, and the circle which separates us from the approaching danger closes more and more tightly. Now we are so surrounded by danger and darkness that we bump against each other, as we search desperately for a means of escape. We all look down below, where people are fighting each other. We look above, where it is quiet and beautiful, and meanwhile we are cut off by the great dark mass, which will not let us go upwards, but which stands before us as an impenetrable wall. It tries to crush us, but cannot do so yet. I can only cry and implore, oh, if only the black circle could recede and open the way for us. Yours, Anne. Thursday, November 11th, 1943. Dear Kitty, I have a good title for this chapter. Ode to my fountain pen in memoriam. My fountain pen has always been one of my most priceless possessions. I value it highly, especially for its thick nib, for one can only really write neatly with a thick nib. My fountain pen has had a very long and interesting pen life, which I will briefly tell you about. When I was 9, my fountain pen arrived in a packet, wrapped in cotton wool, as sample without value, all the way from Aachen, where my grandmother, the kind donor, used to live. I was in bed with flu, while February winds howled round the house. The glorious fountain pen had a red leather case and was at once shown around to all my friends. I and Frank, the proud owner of a fountain pen. When I was 10, I was allowed to take the pen to school, and the mistress went so far as to permit me to write with it. When I was 11, however, my treasure had to be put away again, because the mistress in the 6th form only allowed us to use school pens and inkpots. When I was 12 and went to the Jewish Lyceum, my fountain pen received a new case in honor of the great occasion. It could take a pencil as well, and as it closed with a zipper looked much more impressive. At 13, the fountain pen came with us to the secret annex, where it has raced through countless diaries and compositions for me. Now I am 14, we have spent our last year together. It was on a Friday afternoon after 5 o'clock. I had come out of my room and wanted to go and sit at the table to write, when I was roughly pushed on one side and had to make room for Margot and Daddy, who wanted to practice their Latin. The fountain pen remained on the table unused while, with a sigh, its owner contented herself with a tiny little corner of the table and started rubbing beans. Bean rubbing is making moldy beans decent again. I swept the floor at 5:45 and threw the dirt, together with the bad beans, into a newspaper and into the stove. A terrific flame leaped out, and I thought it was grand that the fire should burn up so well when it was practically out. All was quiet again. The Latinites had finished, and I went and sat at the table to clear up my writing things, but look as I might, my fountain pen was nowhere to be seen. I looked again, Margot looked, but there was not a trace of the thing. Perhaps it fell into the stove together with the beans, Margot suggested. Oh, no, of course not, I answered. When my fountain pen didn't turn up that evening, however, we all took it that it had been burned, all the more as celluloid is terribly inflammable. And so it was, our unhappy fears were confirmed. When Daddy did the stove the following morning, the clip used for fastening was found among the ashes. Not a trace of the gold nib was found. Must have melted and stuck to some stone or other, Daddy thought. I have one consolation, although a slender one. My fountain pen has been cremated, just what I want later. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, November 17th, 1943. Dear Kitty, shattering things are happening. Diphtheria reigns in Ellie's home, so she is not allowed to come into contact with us for 6 weeks. It makes it very awkward over food and shopping, not to mention missing her companionship. Kufuus is still in bed and has had nothing but porridge and milk for 3 weeks. Crowler is frantically busy. The Latin lessons Margot sends in are corrected by a teacher and returned, Margot writing in Ellie's name. The teacher is very nice and witty too. I expect he is glad to have such a clever pupil. Dussel is very put out, none of us knows why. It began by his keeping his mouth closed upstairs. He didn't utter a word to either Mr. or Mrs. Van Don. Everyone was struck by it, and when it lasted a couple of days, Mummy took the opportunity of warning him about Mrs. Van Don, who, if he went on like this, could make things very disagreeable for him. Dussel said that Mr. Van Don started the silence, so he was not going to be the one to break it. Now I must tell you that yesterday was the 16th of November, the day he had been exactly 1 year in the secret Annex. Mummy received a plant in honor of the occasion, but Mrs. Van Don, who for weeks beforehand had made no bones about the fact that she thought Dussel should treat us to something, received nothing. Instead of expressing, for the first time, his thanks for our unselfishness in taking him in, he didn't say a word. And when I asked him, on the morning of the 16th, whether I should congratulate or condole, he answered that it didn't matter to him. Mummy, who wanted to act as peacemaker, didn't get one step further, and finally the situation remained as it was. Der Mann hat einen Giassen grist. Und ist so klein von Taten. Yours, Anne. Saturday, November 27th, 1943. Dear Kitty, yesterday evening, before I fell asleep, who should suddenly appear before my eyes but lies? I saw her in front of me, clothed in rags, her face thin and worn. Her eyes were very big, and she looked so sadly and reproachfully at me that I could read in her eyes, "Oh, Anne, why have you deserted me? Help, oh, help me, rescue me from this hell." And I cannot help her, I can only look on, how others suffer and die, and can only pray to God to send her back to us. I just saw lies, no one else, and now I understand. I misjudged her and was too young to understand her difficulties. She was attached to a new girlfriend, and to her it seemed as though I wanted to take her away. What the poor girl must have felt like, I know the feeling so well myself. Sometimes, in a flash, I saw something of her life, but a moment later I was selfishly absorbed again in my own pleasures and problems. It was horrid of me to treat her as I did, and now she looked at me, oh so helplessly, with her pale face and imploring eyes. If only I could help her. Oh, God, that I should have all I could wish for, and that she should be seized by such a terrible fate. I am not more virtuous than she. The spirit of the man is great. How puny are his deeds. She, too, wanted to do what was right, Why should I be chosen to live and she probably to die? What was the difference between us? Why are we so far from each other now? Quite honestly, I haven't thought about her for months, yes, almost for a year. Not completely forgotten her, but still I had never thought about her like this until I saw her before me in all her misery. Oh, Lies, I hope that, if you live until the end of the war, you will come back to us and that I shall be able to take you in and do something to make up for the wrong I did you. But when I am able to help her again, then she will not need my help so badly as now. I wonder if she ever thinks of me. If so, what would she feel? Good Lord, defend her, so that at least she is not alone. Oh, if only you could tell her that I think lovingly of her and with sympathy, perhaps that would give her greater endurance. I must not go on thinking about it, because I don't get any further. I only keep seeing her great big eyes and cannot free myself from them. I wonder if Lies has real faith in herself, and not only what has been thrust upon her. I don't even know. I never took the trouble to ask her. Lies, if only I could take you away, if only I could let you share all the things I enjoy. It is too late now, I can't help or repair the wrong I have done. But I shall never forget her again, and I shall always pray for her. Yours, Anne.